Hey everybody, it's Julian or Flow Graphics here, and sorry about the long wait, but this is episode 4 of Game Dev Diaries. So we've worked on a ton of stuff since the last episode. That was why there was sort of such a big gap. I had a university break over Christmas and things like that, and then we sort of didn't develop it for a little while, and then we had to chug through a lot of things to get done that took a while. A certain amount of mechanics and things that we worked on in the art assets took a couple of weeks to get done. So I wanted to show them when they were finished at the end, or close to being finished rather than halfway through. So this is where we're at so far. As you can see, I'm just in scene 1 or level 1 now. And you'll probably notice there's a huge difference from the last episode. So straight off the bat, we've worked heavily on art assets. Me and another member, Damien, worked hard on getting the first rollout for all of the art assets. So nothing's at final stages yet, but we're working hard on trying to get the aesthetic of the game as accurate as possible. Which means getting all of our art assets in and seeing what they look like. If they need changes, change them. Starting on our lighting, starting on some of our effects and particles and things, and just seeing what it looks like, because now's the time that we want to make changes and make sure we have the right aesthetic before we finalize our art assets, before we finalize all of our lighting details and all that sort of stuff. So as you can see, this is level 1. It's been filled out a lot more with assets. So we have a couple of really nice sort of banyan trees, which were a really big pain to make actually, because we wanted to keep the whole flat poly aesthetic of the game. Another thing that you guys might have missed is we're originally going to actually go for textured materials. We're going to hand paint the textures and go for really painterly, almost like World of Warcraft, League of Legends, that sort of painterly feel, in a really simplistic way. But we thought long and hard about it, and we came to the conclusion that it would actually look as a better aesthetic, and it would actually be a lot more efficient to make if we just went with the flat shaded materials and just focused on fidelity of the models instead, and actually went with the low poly aesthetic. So we chose to go with that and focus heavily on lighting and shading rather than focusing on materials, and I think it's worked out really well. As you can see, there's been a lot more things added. So we've got these little bamboo sticks coming up. We've got our nice trees. We've got little bushes and shrubs. We've got some ferns scattered around the place, broken tiles. We've got some nice railings here. We've got a whole lot of things. We're also going to color code all of the pressure plates and elevators and things like that. So if a pressure plate sets off an elevator, depending on what type of pressure plate it is, they're going to be color coded. So for instance, the interactable block emits blue light from the centers. So a pressure plate that gets triggered by the interactable block will emit blue light, and then an elevator that gets triggered by that will emit blue light. But these colors are actually wrong, but if a player was to step on a pressure plate, it will actually be purple, and then an elevator triggered by that would have a purple light. So it's just nice to have a nice color coding system, so people can easily understand what's what, and it also just looks really nice as an aesthetic. But yeah, you can see we've also done a lot here. So we've made a whole bunch of rock models and really filled out the edges of the scene. And then if I actually play the scene quickly, you can see we've done a lot on particles as well. So I'll quickly just mute the game in case you can hear that. So we've worked more on water. This is just this was the very first time we made the aesthetic for water. So this is not final by any means. This is simply just a bunch of planes smashed together. The level 2 layout I've done, the water's a little bit nicer, but we've gone with the whole squarey pixely aesthetic. And if you remembered back to the original concept art, right at the start, I'll actually give me 1 second. I'll quickly bring it up. So this was the original concept art, one of the pieces that we did for the game, and as you can see, there's this squarey pixely effect of the water, and I don't know why I chose to make this. I just really like the look of it, and that's why I did it for the concept art. And then we were thinking about how to make our water, and we just said, why don't we just literally just copy what we did for the concept art, which I think looks really effective. Obviously we're going to spend a lot more detail, a lot more time refining it, but as for a basic aesthetic and a basic look, to say, yeah, this is around about what we want it to look like, I think it's just fine for now. And then also worked on the pool a little bit. You can see we've got some really nice particles emitting from the end zone at the end here, which looks really nice. And this is actually using an emissive texture. It's not baked in the lighting, so it's not emitting a whole lot of light. but it's actually using an emissive texture. And there's a couple of places where we're using emissive textures, which just look really nice with the whole global illumination and everything. So yeah, as you can see, level 1 is looking a lot nicer. I can actually click on the game screen here. I can move around and do all this sort of stuff and move my player around. So something you may notice straight off the bat is the game scene actually looks a bit different. And there's two things that make it different, which we decided to change. So first thing is, the camera used to be just a orthographic isometric camera. And we thought the game was sort of, sorry about the hierarchy by the way, it's super messy, we need to clean everything up, but we thought the game in general was looking a little bit sort of flat. So we actually chose to change it from an orthographic to a perspective. You can see this is orthographic here now, and it looks pretty flat. If I was to just rotate the camera quickly, whoops, I have to rotate the camera manager to the sort of isometric view, that's what it would look like. But if you can see, if I then change it to perspective, with just a little bit of depth, it just adds a whole different sort of perspective to the game. And when you're actually passing through the scene, it has that a little bit of overlay where the background's moving a little bit slower than the foreground, and it just adds a really nice sense of depth. Obviously, that's what perspective is, but when you sort of trick the viewer into thinking it's an orthographic, but add a little bit of perspective, it's just a really cool effect. And then another thing we've added is, you might have noticed these little labels up here floating in the sky. We've actually added camera rotation. So at the moment, the camera is automatically centered, the pivot of the camera is automatically centered between the center point between the two players. And we've got that center point, and we've actually made it so we have two markers. Depending on what the type of level it is, these markers will vary, and the camera rotation will vary as well. But for level 1, it's pretty straightforward. It's just start and end. And the camera actually rotates depending on how far along the line is that center point is. So like, let's pretend the min is 0%, or the minimum marker here is, let's say 90 degrees, and then the red one is 270 degrees. That degrees of rotation will slowly rotate as the players go from one side to the other, which is really cool. So if I quickly play the scene now, you'll get to see this firsthand, whether it starts on sort of like a front-facing isometric view, and then when I push it, it's slowly rotating to a 90-degree sort of side view, which just adds a really, really nice sense of depth to the game. And it also opens up a lot of mechanics for us, because obviously when you're stuck with a single view, it makes life a little bit difficult for level design, because you have to plan everything to be only seen from one view. So for instance, we have our ladders here, and we sort of have this big block, this first block sort of overlapping the second block. So when the second player's behind there, he can't see, he doesn't have the best sort of view of where he is, which isn't a problem for this level. But for future mechanics, if there was a rotating door or some sort of pickup block down there, you just wouldn't be able to see it. But now we have our rotating script, we can say, oh, okay, well, we can just rotate the camera to this angle when we get to that point, so they'll be able to see it, which is really cool. So we've worked a ton on that. We also worked on a bit of refinement for certain mechanics, and we also added some mechanics. So unfortunately, it's not working in the scene in the scene I'm using right now, but we added a pickup block mechanic. So you can see right here I have a little pickup block, and this will just sort of be sitting on like a little platform or something. And what happens is a player can go up to it, and a little GUI element will pop up above the player's head with like a little X button, and you'll be able to pick this up, and it will sort of child the block to you, so you can then run around holding this block in your hands. And then you'll be able to press the same button just to simply drop it on the ground. Otherwise, you'll actually be able to throw it around 2 blocks in front of you. So this is basically used for sort of situations and puzzles where there's a gap, or there's a place that you can't reach, or maybe there's a pressure plate across like a little sort of crevasse in the ground, and then you have to throw this block over that gap to land on that pressure plate, so then you can get across. So it just adds another layer of depth to the game, adding that mechanic. And it was relatively straightforward to add. We sort of did a couple iterations of it, and it's working at the moment, just unfortunately not in the build I'm using right now. But another thing you may notice is, I'll go to scene 2 here. We've actually filled out scene 2 to a basic level. It was sort of, we just started doing that in this sprint cycle, so the last week and a half, 2 weeks, we started filling out scene 2, and it's looking pretty good. We still have a fair bit to go on it, but it's at a relatively nice detail level now. As you can see, the lighting's not 100%. We are going with sort of like a sunset, so level 1 is sort of early afternoon, level 2 is sort of mid-afternoon, 3 late, and then we're sort of going later and later in the day. So yeah, it's a bit more pinky, this scene, though I wouldn't pay attention to the sort of the lighting or the rendering, because it's definitely not 100%, and the hierarchy is absolutely disgust like really bad in this scene. We haven't ordered anything. I literally just sort of smashed everything together. So the projected generals are a little bit messy at this time. I'll just change the point light, the directional light, so you can see everything a little bit better. But yeah, it's a little bit messy, but we'll work on cleaning that up pretty soon. So yeah, this is scene 2, and then we've basically, it's the exact same scene, but we've sort of reworked it. So we've got a nice little river waterfall sort of going around the edge here. We've also added in the sort of some extra prefabs for the rotating platforms and the seesaw here. So you can see the seesaw has this nice sort of brace holding it, and some wooden planks. And then we have this the other seesaw with the boulder that falls down onto it. And the boulder's got a nice sort of model now. It's like this cool sort of swirly pattern. You can't see it too well in this light. I'll just sort of move it out. Whoops, out of the way here. But yeah, it's got this cool sort of swirly pattern now, which goes pretty well with the game's aesthetic. And then we sort of go here. We have our nice lever, which is just a bit updated model, and then our rotating platform. So if I start the game, you'll sort of see these things in action. We've got our rotating platform here, and then we've got our waterfall here. The planes of the water are a lot neater than in level 1. Level 1 was just sort of smashed together, though. We are still working on the particles. As you can see, we sort of going for like this nice sort of stream effect, where there's a stream coming from underneath this seesaw here, and then it sort of winds its way around while sort of cascading over the edge. Though, like, yeah, the water's by far not done. And then I'll just get this boulder and move him a bit forward. We can see that moves down there, and then that sets off the seesaw. So everything still works really nicely, really sort of effective. And then, you know, we can do some weird stuff, playing around with the boulder. So yeah, that's scene 2. It's looking pretty nice. We've sort of it's definitely a lot more detailed since when you guys would have last seen it. But if I go to scene 3, you'll see scene 3 hasn't been filled out or anything yet. Obviously the prefabs have updated, so when we updated the art assets for like the spinning platforms and things, they've updated it in all the other scenes, though it hasn't been filled out with any of the blocks or anything. And we've actually chosen to update this half of scene 3 as well. So this right hand side, we're actually redoing it in a bit better way. But apart from that, as far as new content, we've actually worked on level 4 and 5. So if I go to level 4 now, this is sort of basically 100% mechanically working. So we have a working level 4. As you can see, it looks terrible. But that's not the point. We just needed to white box it for playtesting. So the whole point of this level is level 5 is going to be basically the bridge between one mountain to another. And then that sort of level 6 is going to be the final level, at least at this stage. And that's sort of going deep inside the cave, and you're completely inside a cave. There won't be any outside lighting. So level 4 is sort of leading into that final sort of bridge scene. So this is going to be a nice little plateau in the middle of a mountains that sort of lead up the mountain face, which will then go to the bridge at the top. So what this is going to actually be is a water level that sort of rises slowly as the players sort of try to climb up this obstacle course, and you sort of just got to beat the timer. This hasn't been scripted or anything to water yet, but it will be pretty straightforward to do. But this is sort of really agility based, this task. So the first 3 levels are a bit more puzzle-like, sort of taking your time, working out the mechanics of the game. And then 4 and 5 are a lot more agility based. There's a lot more things to do with timing and sort of working with your partner in conjunction with them and making sure your timing and your movement's correct. And then level 6 is sort of a really big combination of both of them. So yeah, we've got sort of a lot of ladders and a lot of coordination here. We also have a new block which is called like the punch block, which you can see is literally just big fists that sort of pop out and will punch you out of the way. So you know, we've got these fists here, so they're pretty brutal. These moving platforms are actually broken. These should be moving with them, so ignore that. But yeah, so they're like another hazard. And yeah, they're pretty brutal. It's pretty funny when you just sort of get launched off the side of the cliff by one of these fist blocks. But yeah, so this level, I won't explain 100% how it works. I'll leave some of the things up to you guys to sort of find out later. But this level's pretty fun. And actually, the first time I play tested it with one of my partners, it actually took us a fair amount of time to actually finish it. But we had a lot of fun on the way, and it was sort of really effective. And then I can go to scene 5. Well, that's the wrong one. Scene 5 for you guys. So we've also been filling out level 5. So this isn't the final this isn't the final prototype, but this was sort of the main, like the sort of, we did an initial sort of sketch and initial level design, and then we made that in Unity, and then this is sort of the first go over where we refined it a little bit, and then we still need to refine it a bit more. So this is, again, basically going to be like a big long straight bridge sort of up high in the mountains, and then we'll actually introduce a new mechanic to do with wind tunnels. So if I quickly play the game, you'll see some particles going off. That was just the first little puff. I'll wait till they go off for the second time. These particle effects, which actually these aren't the final art or the final particles for the wind tunnels, but this is something we're using as placeholders at the moment, which is actually like wind physics. So these players do work and everything. This scene like 100% works, but I will have to move them back to the start because we're just testing those. So another thing is, yeah, it takes a while to move the players sometimes because of all the rope physics. But if I just quickly move them to the start, there we go. No, that's a bit too far. So let's try get them. That's good. And then we'll play the game. And then you can see if I get in the middle of this wind tunnel, I got a feeling the red dude's just going to get flung off the edge of the cliff here. No, he's in between. Okay, so you can see my player's getting pushed back. So it's applying physics to my character, and it becomes pretty interesting if I'm getting sort of smashed here. But yeah, so this is actually introducing the wind tunnels, which you sort of have to time appropriately. There's it sort of goes on and off with the wind, and you've got to sort of try get through when it's not trying to push you off the edge. And then we have a lot of things, rotating platforms you have to try to jump on and coordinate, which are pretty tricky. And then we have some destruction blocks here, and some cool little puzzles. I won't go into too much depth, but it's a lot more agility based than timing based, and it makes for some really interesting gameplay. It's definitely sort of a game that can make or break friendships, because it is pretty interesting working with a partner and sort of deciding each other's fate. But as you can see, we've worked on a fair bit. This is sort of the last stage of production, so by the next video, we'll have basically levels 4 to 6 completely mechanically working. Their prototypes sort of finished, and then we'll have level 3, the art assets filled out for level 3 and 2. So all levels 1 to 3 will be around like 80-90% complete, and then 4 to 6 will be around like 50% complete. And then after that, it'll just be hauling out all of the art, all the aesthetics, and then like once we have all the art assets in and we say, okay, these are the final assets, we're happy with these, we'll start working on all the lighting and all the rendering and all the particles and all that sort of stuff, because at the moment a lot of it's just placeholder things, and it's all this just sort of quick work just to get the feel for the game, make sure the aesthetics right. But yeah, that's the bulk of it. We have sort of done a lot of coding things behind the scene, obviously, like for instance in level 4 here we actually have these buttons which trigger these punch blocks here, which is another mechanic we had to add. And there's a lot of mechanics that we sort of worked on and had to refine to do with the sort of the interactable objects throughout the scenes and stuff like that. If you want, I can sort of dive into the scripts and stuff a little bit more, but it's sort of, it's not that exciting. A lot of it's just sort of like modular building parts and scripts to do with just all the separate objects and how they work. It's not too intriguing. It's also a bit messy, but we've done a lot of the scripting in the past couple of weeks has just been purely like cleaning up and making everything tidy and fixing any bugs and any problems like that. So yeah, before I end the video, I just want to say something that's really important. So basically, we've sort of got to the stage where we're doing a lot of QA testing, and we need some sort of testers for the game. So if you didn't know, this game is sort of ported for console. Obviously it's going to be a computer build of the game, but you will need Xbox or just wired console controllers for the game. Like if you just have an Xbox controller with a cable, with a USB cable, that will work. You can just plug that into you can plug that into your computer, and it'll just work. You won't have to do anything. If you have a wireless controller, you will have to have an adapter if you don't have one. And most other controllers, sort of third-party controllers, should work, but Xbox controllers will 100% work. And then you can also get PlayStation controllers with the sort of the adapter to make it think it's an Xbox controller as well. So if you have 2 Xbox controllers and you and a friend are sort of keen to test the game and do some testing and playthroughs of it, let me know in the comments. So I'll be picking some people from the comment section. So just make sure you have a computer, you have 2 controllers, and you and a friend will be able to play the game and help us out with some feedback. And then if you're really awesome, maybe you could record like a playthrough video or give us your thoughts in a bit more detail. Really, the more info you guys can give us, the better, because we have more to work with and we can just make the game better based off your feedback. So yeah, if you'd be interested in testing the game and having like an early sort of beta build in the next couple of weeks, maybe a month, maybe quicker, like if I get some sort of feedback quicker, I can literally throw you a build in the next week or 2. So yeah, let me know in the comments. I'd really love to hand out some testing versions of the game. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. I think for next episode, I will dive a bit more into the coding and the scripting, because there were some people asking about that. And it will be a bit more cleaner, and there will be a lot of the things that aren't working at the moment will be 100% working by the next video I make. So it will be a lot better. I don't want to sort of half-ass it now and show you like a lot of incomplete coding. So I'd rather just show you everything that works and is really nice and clean and just easy to read. So yeah, hopefully you guys all enjoyed the video. Thanks heaps for watching, and thanks for all the great feedback on this sort of series. Actually, I thought I was taking a bit of a leap. I wasn't sure if you guys would enjoy this sort of content, but I've gotten really good feedback from all of you guys, and it's really awesome. It really makes me happy to see you guys enjoy these videos and enjoy the gameplay and stuff so much. So thanks again for watching. It's been Flow Graphics or Julian here. I hope you all have an awesome day, everybody. See ya.